It's like football, baby.
What's up, everybody? Welcome in to the Fantasy Football Smackdown. I'm your host, Kyle August. You can follow me on Twitter at KyleMonth8. And joining me on the podcast today as we take a look back at some of our amazing 2021 preseason predictions, I got Addison Hayes back in the house from DLF. How's it going, Addison?
Awesome, man. Yeah. Thank you for asking me to come back on here and talk about my terrible 2021 NFL predictions. I'm sure this is just going to be a laughing stock of an episode of everybody laughing at us for being really bad at predicting the NFL.
Dude, I mentioned this like when we did the show preseason. I say it every year probably, but like I was doing like this type of stuff. Like I jot down like my predictions for like division winners or like certain things. Like even before I was doing a podcast, and I thought it was fun. I always just like kind of look back when it's on the record though, and like other people can hear it. It's just like it's a little cringe worthy listen back. But I definitely challenge anybody. Like if you think we're bad at this, try it next year. It's not as easy as you would think. Even just 5-6 months removed from the preseason. But anyway, man, so it's been a while since you and I have connected. But before we get too far along, what have you been up to, man? What kind of content you guys putting out there over at DLF? There's no off season, right? So what have you been up to?
There is no off season. Yeah. I mean, I'm just continuing to work the DLF YouTube channel. That's been my baby, my pride and joy. So we drop content Monday through Friday. And then now we're starting to drop on Saturday. Cal Shoemake at Calvin and Hobby is dropping a really cool new like interviewee kind of show, but it's actually like informative for fantasy, like talking through processes and identifying truths versus myths and stuff. So I had the privilege of being the first guest for that one that dropped last Saturday, and he's interviewing Matt Waldman tonight for episode 2. So it's going to be a really good series from what I've heard from him. But yeah, the DLF YouTube channel and DLF, which is now a part of BetSperts after that news. So we're really excited about all of the new avenues and opportunities that we as DLF have now being a part of the BetSperts umbrella with 4for4 and Fantasy Life. And it's going to be fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, Waldman was trying to get on this show, but I was like, nah. It's cool, man. I got Addison Hayes coming on. I don't need you tonight. I think I caught that because you were talking about your legendary and AJ Green versus Amari Cooper take, right? Is that what that show was on, right?
Oh yeah, yep. The OGs remember the AJ Green Amari Cooper debate of 2017.
that was fun times. I think that was that was around the time I first met you, so that was definitely one of those things. Like, oh yeah, it's that kid.
That was like a month into me joining the industry. Like I literally I said to myself, I was like, my Twitter account is going to be fantasy football focused. And I joined Dynasty Football Factory. And then like a month later, I began this like massive, multiple weeks on end debate of just pure chaos. But
dude, and the thing was like, I remember, there were many other reasons, but like I was definitely like on your side because at the time, especially like I was like team old dude, right? Like I was like, screw all this young youth, like get these rookies out of my face. I'm just gonna win some leagues and then banners hang forever, right? That's like my mentality. I've definitely adjusted my dynasty strategy a bit here and there because I know that I know on some of those teams are a little too hammer on the vets, and then like a year later, I'm like, oh god, like I got nothing left here, right? So, but I think there's a balance you can catch there. But I do remember that I thought, and I saw the clip you guys posted mentioning that, so I was like, oh, okay, that's a flash. That takes you back just a bit. So.
I tried to find the original tweet, but I couldn't. I don't know what happened, or if like because I remember it was in response to a poll, and so I like quote tweeted the poll. So if that tweet went away, then I think my original tweet then would go. I don't know how that would work, but I couldn't find it. But I found a whole bunch of other conversations around it, and it was fun to scroll through some of that stuff from. Gosh, that's basically coming up on 5 years ago now.
Yeah,
which is insane.
Yeah, it's and I mean that kind of gives you like it's a good leeway or headway into this discussion a little bit too, because I mean sometimes I like looking back at stuff like either like rookie drafts just from last year or like 2-3 years ago, what dynasty
Mhm.
rankings look like. Ryan McDowell does a great job always kind of doing like this is what the top 10 was in 2013. You're like, oh my god, like
No.
what were we thinking? So that's always entertaining at minimum, but. Um, Before we get too far along, too, I know it seems like forever, but how did 2021 treat you from a fantasy dynasty perspective? Any lessons learned, I guess, on that front?
Yeah, my lesson was not to draft Allen Robinson and Robert Woods in like every league. That was the lesson that I
Yeah.
learned. A little bit of diversification would have helped for sure.
Hmm.
Um, it did really feel like one of the worst fantasy seasons I've had in a long time. Last year, I was like 2020 actually turned out to be like a really good year for me. So I think it was just kind of like regression, just
Yeah.
kind of back, and it just swung a little bit too far in the opposite direction.
Hmm.
Um, but I had a championship opportunity. It didn't win it, got blown out. But that didn't really matter at the end of it. And a couple other dynasty leagues, I'm in different directions in some of those as well. But um, yeah, it wasn't that great, but
Gotcha.
um, it was still fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, that's what it's all about, man. I know you have those good years, you have those bad years, and you just got to take them as they come. And sometimes
Mhm.
it's just because you look at your dynasty rosters, like, oh, I have a lot of rebuilds for whatever reason here or whatever. I'm kind of going this direction, and so yeah, sometimes that has to be accounted for too. But now, good to hear. Definitely glad to have you back on here. Let's just dive right into this thing.
Mhm.
We'll take a look at the division winners. And then we had, what was this, roughly 12 categories or so, 15. I mean, I really was ambitious on this. 15 categories, just a lot of random, some fantasy relevant category stats and things, and some random ass stuff that I just was able to find stats on and threw it in here. So let's start with the NFC. So the division winners, of course, were the Rams, Cowboys, Bucks, and Packers. And Addison, we're going to start off on the right foot here because you nailed it. 4 for 4
Mhm.
on the division winners. I was one short. I picked the Seattle Seahawks to win the West. That was obviously stupid. They didn't make the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, obviously you predicted this thing perfect. So I don't know why I really showed up to this show. But as far as the wild cards go, we had the Cardinals, Niners, and Eagles. You did pick the Niners as a wild card team, so you nailed it there.
Mhm.
I was 0 for on the wild cards, although I did pick the Rams to at least make the playoffs as a wild card team. So I guess just on the NFC as a whole, what was your biggest surprise there? Which of these teams do you think maybe is also maybe sustainable that maybe were there maybe a year earlier than you thought?
Yeah, I mean, I was really happy to see that it went 4 for 4 with predicting the winners. Although, I wish I could say that like they were pretty chalky. I think Green Bay and Tampa were pretty chalky.
Mhm.
Dallas maybe a little bit more as well. And then, I mean, with the benefit of hindsight, the LA Rams was pretty chalky as well. So I'll go with that. Um, yeah, man. I mean, Seattle not being in there. You had Seattle obviously as the winner, and then I had
Yeah.
them as a wild card team. And that turned out to be Arizona instead. And so that one was just kind of a surprise. Of course, Russell Wilson getting hurt definitely didn't help anything. And then when he came back from injury, he wasn't Russell Wilson. So that just hurt everything in Seattle. So can't really predict the injuries and whatnot. It would be interesting to see how that team would have done if Russ never got hurt. Um, and then, Philly was the other one that neither one of us even touched on.
No.
Um, which yeah, I don't really know what to make of Philly. Like they had a really weird year. I don't think Jalen Hurts is the long-term answer. I think he is still the answer in 2022, but he's not the long-term guy. He's
Mhm.
not. I don't think he's going to sign some big extension. They might just write out his rookie year for the next or rookie contract for the next 2 years, and just keep him cheap there while they build out the rest of the team and then prepare for the quarterback to come in.
Mhm.
So every year they say that what is it like 6 or 7 new teams like come into the playoffs or something like that, and
Mhm.
then obviously that means 6 or 7 teams that were in the playoffs were no longer in the playoffs. Philly might be one of those teams next year,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I would be with you. Like on as far as that list goes, if I was predicting a team that wasn't going to make it back, I think as of today, Philly is probably the easier pick there. And so I think you're right. Arizona is the one that I will be interested to see next year how they bounce back from a slow end of the season. They were like gangbusters to start the year, and then I don't know what happened unless they were playing the Cowboys. That was pretty disappointing. So we'll see if that if they can turn it around. But I think that you actually touched on the two things that I was going to point to as well. I had the Saints and the Washington what Commanders, is that what they're called now? Oh my god, making the playoffs. I don't know what I was thinking there, but I think Washington though is it'll be interesting to see what their quarterback situation looks like. New Orleans now everything's up in the air with the change over at the head coach, but as far as Russell Wilson and Hurts, like those are two names that are really interesting to me. I think we'll keep an eye on Russell Wilson's status throughout the offseason if he stays in Seattle. For me, Hurts, like I was approaching him last year as like, hey, if you get one, you're going to get one really good year out of him in 2021, and anything else on that's just like gravy. But it's looking like that gravy is going to be there at least for 2022, and you got to be feeling really good about that if you invested in him or not. So if you were doing, let's say if you were doing a startup today, are you taking the younger guy with the risk in Jalen Hurts, or are you taking the vet that still has a little bit of uncertainty in Russell Wilson? Who would you lean out of those two guys?
Oh, geez. I think I would still take Russell Wilson just because of the stability and the security. I've been in the camp all year long that he's staying in Seattle. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he retires as a Seahawk. I know that there's talk about all the drama and whatnot between him and Pete Carroll, or him and the organization and whatnot. And I don't know. I don't see him as the kind of person that really is going to will his way off the team.
Mm-hmm.
And if he is on a team, I mean, he's throwing to Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. Like, how much better of an offense, weapon wise, can you really get for a quarterback? So I think I would take Russell Wilson, and then promptly flip him in like week 7 after he has 6 really good weeks before his second half demise that happens like every single year. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think Jalen Hurts is the answer. So I'm just going to take the longevity in Russell Wilson, and that's actually a really hot take based on startup ADP right now. Jalen Hurts is QB7, and Russell Wilson is QB12.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe the startup price for Hurts last year, and I thought that was nuts. I mean, I pretty much am going to just copy and paste my thoughts from last year. Is like, you're going to get one really good season out of Jalen Hurts in 2022, because if he's out there, fantasy wise, he's going to be good. But right. I mean, usually when you're taking quarterbacks, right, and especially young quarterbacks, you're like, all right, I got a piece, that I can build around. And Hurts, that thing could turn to dust, real quick. I didn't see anything from him this last season that would change my mind on that. I mean, as far as like his longevity, I think he's going to be a great fantasy player when he's out there. But I'm with you. I would go with Wilson as well, and just kind of feel a little bit more secure that, I'm going to at least get 2, maybe, 3 years of really solid production. But I think what you said also is relevant. Like, you could probably flip him as soon as he shows that he's Russell Wilson again pretty quick, for a lot more than even what Hurts is probably ceiling is. So
for sure.
The last thoughts on the NFC. Obviously, you picked San Francisco to make the playoffs as a wildcard team. They made it. They made it, pretty far there, a lot further than people expected. Again, all they had to do was just play Dallas, and then they just advanced to round 2. But what's your thoughts on, like, as far as the, there's news Jimmy G could get dealt. He's looking to obviously be somewhere that he can play. From an NFL perspective, he took his team to the freaking championship game, NFC championship game. Now we're hopefully going to get a look at Trey Lance. What's your thoughts on that quarterback situation as far as, in San Francisco?
It's definitely Trey Lance. I think it has to be. I know you said that he took his team to the NFC championship, and I don't know how true that statement actually is.
Okay, he was on the team when it went to the NFC championship.
He was the starting quarterback for a team that went to the NFC championship, which is very much felt like when they went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Like that one game when he had like 8 pass attempts because Raheem Mostert had like 30 for 250 and 3 or something like that.
Yeah,
like Garoppolo is the definition of game manager. Like, he just doesn't need to lose the game. but he's not going to help you win the game. He's a solid quarterback. And actually, fun fact about Jimmy Garoppolo, now that Tom Brady's retired, he is the leader in Super Bowl rings, most Super Bowls among active players right now.
No way. Oh, because he was on the
because
Patriots?
he backed up
Oh
because he was
God.
back up to Tom Brady.
Oh
So yeah,
my
he
God.
currently I saw that stat on TikTok and I thought that was crazy, but yeah, he's gone. Honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing him in Pittsburgh as a Steelers fan because anything is better than Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind to see it if it was for a good price. Obviously not second or third round like what the Niners paid for him, because that's not what he is anymore. But he's definitely gone, and the Trey Lance era is really going to begin, and that is going to be a really hot topic for dynasty and fantasy. Is what do the Niners look like with Trey Lance? Because there's a lot of upside there, but it's a rushing quarterback. And maybe he doesn't favor Debo as much, or maybe he doesn't favor Kittle as much. Maybe it's Ayuk. I don't really know. We just had like a super small sample size of Trey Lance as the starting quarterback. So that's going to be a huge topic of discussion all year long.
Yeah, they definitely, when Lance was in there, it seemed like, and he got that spot start late in the year, and it didn't really feel like they were building the offense around him. It's more like, hey, you're in here for the week, and we got to get Jimmy back in here, right? So
Right.
I don't even know how much you can take away from that. But that is my biggest takeaway, just what you mentioned. Like, I have a lot of Ayuk and Kittle, and I'm just like scared to death. Like, that is, as much as we'd all make fun of Jimmy G. Like, he was propping out Kittle up, especially, I think, in a lot of places. Now, Kittle's obviously extremely talented, so hopefully he'll continue to shine, because we need those tight ends in dynasty and fantasy football. But hopefully we'll get the fantasy production out of Lance. He'll keep everybody else status quo enough as far as the pass catchers, and hopefully Jimmy G will land in a spot where at minimum it gives somebody a solid enough quarterback that you're not looking at staring down Mason Rudolph or Drew Lock, for God's sakes, or whatever Tampa's going to do now. I think the quarterback landscape is going to be interesting to watch when you look at, Pittsburgh, Tampa, New Orleans. What do they do? Washington. It's going to be really, really interesting, especially when I'm not a draft expert. I'm just consuming it, and I'll spit out some takes later. But this quarterback class isn't one to write home about, from what we're hearing. So we really need these sophomore quarterbacks now to step up, and then we need some of these other guys like Jimmy G or Jameis to land somewhere and help us out, at least to prop up some of those weapons wherever they land. So it's gonna be an interesting year for that. AFC, we had the division winners here. You did pretty good on division winners, man. You went 7 for 8. That's pretty damn good. The West, East, South, and North, Kansas City, Buffalo, Tennessee in the South, Cincinnati in the North, which neither of us even had them making the playoffs. But you and I both, we got the Chiefs, Bills, and Titans, which I thought was pretty good because I know not a lot of people were on Tennessee. It was still wasn't crazy prediction, like, out of nowhere, but I know a lot of people were on some of the other, was on Indy, with them getting Carson Wentz, but you and I both went Tennessee. I took Pittsburgh as the North winner. At least they made the playoffs. But other than the 3 division winners and then me getting Pittsburgh, we went over the rest of the way. We both had Baltimore, Miami, and then we both had the Browns as well. You had the Chargers. So what was the team as far as the Browns, Ravens, Dolphins, and the Chargers? Which one was the most surprising to you that didn't make the playoffs this season?
I mean, it has to be Baltimore, right? Which I think was, I want to say, largely in part to Lamar Jackson getting hurt, but Tyler Huntley was amazing, you know, and won the Ravens games where it felt like they shouldn't have won, or at least have been in really high competition with, some really good teams in the NFL with Lamar Jackson. Would they have won those games with Lamar? Maybe, maybe not. It's kind of hard to say just because of how well Huntley played, but I think it definitely has to be Baltimore. And it is weird because we did record this, I believe, after both J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards were hurt. Definitely after J.K.
Yeah,
I think
we did. We
Gus
recorded it like a couple of days before the season started.
Right.
Yeah.
So And so the lack of a run game presence, it took them a while to figure out who their guy was, and ended up being the ghost of Devonta Freeman. Um, and then Lamar Jackson missing time, and there just wasn't a lot of continuity, even though, Mark Andrews had a career year and was absolutely, fantastic for fantasy football. Bateman couldn't really get integrated. Sammy Watkins was Sammy Watkins, and Hollywood was about as inconsistent as he always is. So, but overall, I am surprised that Baltimore was not that team, given how bad the Browns were,
Mhm.
and I will say how bad the Steelers were as well, despite them being a playoff team somehow.
Yeah.
It should have been the Chargers, but
Yeah, when
yeah.
you look at like obviously the wild card teams, as in case anyone forgot, was Raiders, Patriots, Steelers. I think that if you put it kind of everything equal for the moment and like took out if everyone's full strength, I think a lot of people would say the Ravens and Chargers definitely should have been there. The
Mhm.
Raiders and Steelers being in there is kind of just seemed like a joke.
Well, the
Um,
Patriots too. I mean,
yeah, I
they
mean that was definitely one where that defense was good enough to get them there, but when it would have been more exciting to see teams like Baltimore or LA, the Chargers in there.
definitely
Um,
the Chargers.
we were
I mean,
definitely
just
robbed.
Justin Herbert.
We were robbed. I think of some of those matchups. I know that Kansas City Pittsburgh game was absolutely horrendous. And maybe that's the answer here. But of the teams that made it this year, which team do you think is most likely to not return to the playoffs in 2022? We'll get you on the record here with this prediction early.
That's not the Steelers, because the Steelers are the obvious
You go,
answer.
"Oh, that's fine. I let you go, Chalk."
Um, I don't know if the Raiders return. I don't know if the Patriots return either. Those three, all three wild card teams are just so
Yes.
weird to me. Like they just got in because of circumstances outside their control.
Mhm.
Um, and so I really would be surprised if next year it's not Baltimore, it's not the Chargers, and maybe another AFC team kind of rises up in there as well.
Mhm.
If maybe they Indianapolis sticks with Carson Wentz or finds a different quarterback, or one of the rookie quarterbacks surprises us next year that goes to one of these teams. But I would be really surprised if it's not Baltimore and not the Chargers as two of those three wild card teams, or if
Mhm.
Baltimore is the division winner, then it's Cincinnati is the other one now.
Sure.
So yeah,
Yeah, I think you're all three wild card teams to me. Just like, how did you guys end up here? Like
right.
so. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a lot of turnover there. And we'll see how that goes. But I think the AFC was definitely one where you just felt like, man, they could have gone with four teams and would have been okay. As far as that goes. So
They could have just played Kansas City and Buffalo like a best of four or best of three for like that should have been how it went.
yeah.
And then and then you can include Cincinnati in there as well too.
Mhm.
Like they just kind of play some like funky three person playoff. That would have been the way to go.
Yeah, that would have been all right. The way this playoff shook out, definitely could have gone without the Pats and Pittsburgh game. That those two games on back to back prime time was not super duper wild card or whatever they were trying to, phrase that as. It was a little rough to watch that
Mhm.
first opening weekend, but obviously so total, you hit on 8 of the playoff teams, and I hit on was that 7. So not too great one way or the other, but I think we'll just focus more on your NFC there. You nailed it pretty good. 5 out of 7 is pretty good.
Hey, you hit on 8.
I hit on 8 too. Oh, I guess I was counting. Yeah, I now that I looked at it again, I
Yeah.
counted halves for ones that I didn't actually get
Oh,
the
okay,
correct
okay.
answer on. So I had Pittsburgh in as a North champion, and they got a wild card. But neither of us picked the Super Bowl matchup that was obviously predictable of Rams Bengals. I went with Chiefs and Packers ultra chalk and didn't hit. And then you had the Bills and Packers, which was still a great call as well. I wasn't as high on Buffalo as you, but we're over on that.
Yeah.
Do you have, before moving to the categories, do you have a Super Bowl pick yet? I know we're about a week and a half away. Rams Bengals, you favoring one over the other?
The sports books are coming out. I think the Rams are a 3 or 4 point favorite, and
Mhm.
I'm pretty in on that. I just think, I mean, the Rams defense and that defensive line. I mean, Aaron Donald's always a problem, but then they added Von Miller, and he's just been as much of an animal as he's always been
Yeah.
back in his like 2015 Denver Bronco days. Like he's absolutely insane. Jalen Ramsey's amazing, and then nobody's stopping Cooper Kupp, and definitely not the Bengals secondary. I don't think is going to stop Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
So I'm in on the LA Rams, and I am rooting for them strictly because of Matthew Stafford. I just
Mhm.
want Matthew Stafford to get his ring after everything that he went through in Detroit.
Yeah.
And if he gets that ring, I think he solidifies himself as a Hall of Famer. I think personally, just because of the stats, and you add the ring on top of that as well. So I'm all in on that. And Joe Burrow has like 15 years to get all of his rings
Yeah.
to do all that he wants to. Matthew Stafford will be 34 in a few days here, and his time is much more limited. So I'm taking Matthew Stafford here in
Yeah.
the first opportunity he has.
Yeah, Mike in the chat, he said 4.5-point favorite for the Rams right
Mhm.
now. I'm taking that too. I'm with you. I think the Rams are all around just a better team. The Bengals have been super fun to watch. Don't get me wrong. It's been a great story, and I'm looking forward to Burrow and Chase and Higgins and that offense for a long,
Right.
for a while. But I
They have a
think,
lot that they can build on as
mm,
well. Like they have a lot to improve. They've
mhm,
already made the Super Bowl at this point, and they can improve on so much. That team could be so good
yeah.
for the next decade and
Mhm.
just be insane.
Yeah, I think if you could make the argument that they were kind of maybe even a year early, like getting there.
Mhm.
But I think too the Rams and McVay, even though it's different QB, will have learned from some of the things that they may have screwed up the first time around. I think
Mhm.
with them getting back to it for a second time, that's also kind of in their favor versus this young Cincinnati team that they're definitely playing with house money. It feels like,
For
but and
sure.
but I mean, I'm just glad that we're not talking about a Niners somebody else Super Bowl because I just felt like that would be very anticlimactic to this season. But I think
Mhm.
we're in for a good game. But I think ultimately, I think the Rams will win it. And I think they can cover if it's at 4.5 or 4. I'm leaning that way right now. So we will see. Let's dive into these categories. Some of these, again, are kind of off the wall nuts. But some of them are fantasy relevant. So we'll cover these. First one is QB passing yards. We're the league leader in passing yards. You and I both went with Dak Prescott, my boy, who, who would have guessed the Cowboys defense would have actually been at least
Micah
mediocre or better at
Parsons.
times. Your boy, Mike, dude, Micah is. I doubted that pick. I was more pissed, I think, because they didn't land a
Never.
corner and they wanted Sertan. It kind of felt like Dallas Goddard again, like how like Eagles moved up and it took Goddard ahead of the Cowboys, and it felt like they didn't know what to do, and they like kind of freaked out. Like I felt like they didn't expect Horn and Sertan to go right in front of them, and then they like traded back, and I'm like, damn you! But Micah Parsons was a beast. Dallas defense was pretty solid all the way around, despite injuries, and Dak was not having to put up those big time numbers like he did the year before. The winner that was Tom Brady, the twice retired Tom Brady, who put up 5,316 yards. Shout out to Stone Cold Steve Austin with that final passing total. But what surprised you there, just in passing yards? Is it just that Brady is forever ageless, no matter if he's playing or not, or just the lack of what we saw from Dak Prescott this season?
Yeah, man, I was really on Tom Brady all off season. I don't know
Mhm.
why I didn't pick him. Now looking back on it,
You're probably just trying to be nice. You're like, this is
maybe.
asshole Cowboys fan letting me hang out. I guess I'll be nice to him before he starts talking about more Cowboys.
Yeah, I don't know. I was all in on Tom Brady. Like I took him in the first round of Scott Fishbowl, and that wasn't like his ADP. I think I took him at like QB 5 or 6, and I was definitely in on Tom Brady and the weapons that he had. So man, I'm kind of mad at myself for not picking that. But the Cowboys season definitely was surprising, not because of how successful they were, but just in the way that they did it.
Mhm.
Obviously the defense being as good as they were really helped out the team from a football standpoint. You guys also were able to rely on Zeke and Pollard as a duo to win games on the ground and not so much having to rely on Dak Prescott like he did in 2020 for the 5 games that Dak was healthy for. So we didn't get to see Dak ball out a whole heck of a lot, and that cascaded down to CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper not having fantastic fantasy seasons, at least with their expectations.
Mhm.
Also, I mean, just so many weapons, but still, like Dak he just didn't have to throw as
Yeah.
much, which just kind of affected everything.
So I have two questions for you. This will put you on the spot because we literally, other than me putting this together, we're just hanging out talking football for a bit. So I'll put you on the spot here as a non-biased Cowboys fan. I got two. So the first one is, what are you doing with Zeke? Like, is this a guy that, like, hey, if you're a contender, this is something to go get because he's a good enough piece for 2022, or are you just like, I'm hands off. I'm on the Pollard train. What's your thoughts on this Cowboys backfield moving forward?
I've been approaching it as kind of hands off, not because I'm on the Pollard train or like I'm
Mhm.
one of those guys that values Pollard over Zeke. I just don't really want the situation in general.
Yeah.
I view him kind of like how I view Aaron Jones as well. Just because well, I mean, Aaron Jones, like I see Dillon overtaking Jones.
Mhm.
Plus Jones's contract is really iffy as well. But Zeke was really touchdown dependent this year. He was really good, like rushing the ball and got the receptions as well. But yeah, I just every single year he just doesn't seem like he's Zeke. Like you can like actually see with your eyes that he is not the same player.
Mhm.
And he was playing through what was it like a torn MCL or something like that,
Yeah,
or
something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
like all year. And man, like I think that he is just a player that I don't really want to bet on, and I'm okay being wrong on that.
Mhm.
For however long that he continues to be good for fantasy, if
Yeah.
he continues, and I just am not really touching it.
Yeah, I'm with you there as well. So and I've said it on the show already, but like I just feel as much as I love Zeke and he's going to be on the Cowboys next year. Like that's his contract's ridiculous. He's not
Yeah.
going anywhere. But I just think you hit the nail right on the head. Touchdown dependent for sure. And we've seen those down years from him in the past where he just gets 6 TDs and you're like, but the yardage was there. I think now the efficiency just isn't where it used to be. And
Mhm.
Pollard should get a little bit more run, but I agree. I'm not like necessarily in on one or the other. I'm just kind of hands off. Second question before we move on to the next category. I have this unhealthy love for CeeDee Lamb still. He was obviously hyped up a lot this offseason.
Mhm.
Didn't necessarily produce at the level that people were hoping. Still super young, still going to be paired with Dak Prescott at least for the next 3 seasons based off of his 5th year option, more than likely being picked up based off his initial performance here. Where are you putting CeeDee Lamb amongst the young wide receivers? I know obviously we got Jamar Chase, you have Justin Jefferson. Lamb was in that group for me before the season started with Jefferson. Now he's kind of maybe taking a step back for some people. What's your thoughts on Lamb as far as his dynasty value?
Yeah, he's fallen down for sure. Just because he hasn't met those expectations in the first 2 years. And that's not to say that he can't, but it's just like wide receiver 25 last year, wide receiver 20 this past year. It's not where you want it to be.
Mhm.
The targets aren't really there. I know even though he led the team in targets, it was still only at 120. You can't get to top 5 fantasy wide receiver on 120 targets unless you have like 13 or more touchdowns like AJ Brown did, that uh like 2 years ago.
Mhm.
And it's just so hard to be there on the volume that he has had over the past couple of years. And I don't really know why that would go away. I mean, they have Amari Cooper, they
Mhm.
have Dalton Schultz, Zeke and Pollard out of the backfield combined for like another 120.
Mhm.
Um, Michael Gallup may or may not be gone. If he's there, that's another guy. If not, Cedric Wilson did really well as that wide receiver 3 as well.
Mhm.
Um, I don't see why he would become the alpha on a team with so many other really good options as well. Um, I have dropped him down, but he's kind of where like DJ Moore would be, like right there, like a really freaking good wide receiver.
Mhm.
It's just all the pieces just haven't been put in place yet.
Yeah.
And it might be hard to predict that they eventually will, but he's still going to be really good. And put him, Terry McLaurin would kind of be in that range as well, just to kind of readjust our expectations for CeeDee Lamb leads us to hopefully no future disappointment and actually properly values him to where, if he were to have a wide receiver 1 season, we would be really happy with him.
Right. Yeah, I'm unfortunately, like, I think the biggest thing is the volume, so
Yeah.
I've had to try to dial my expectations back and you know, it's tough. He's only going in his third year, but like when you see what Jamar Chase did this year and what Justin Jefferson's done for 2 straight years coming into the league, it's like he's just not there. And that's kind of, I had him in that realm before, but right. We'll see. There are some potential free agent moves that as far as people leaving that offense, but we've seen that they spread the ball around. I mean, even Cooper isn't, he hadn't been getting those alpha targets that you need to see for fantasy to put a guy in a top 5. So just didn't see that step this year, but that will be a team to keep an eye on. I think from an offense perspective, I think that one's going underneath the radar just a bit. There's a few free agents, so we'll see who they retain. And they don't really have the depth there because Wilson's a free agent too. So said Wilson, Gallup injured and a free agent, and Schultz is actually a free agent too. So we'll see what they pull off there. But anyway, back to QBs. So I took out the top names here. I lopped off Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen to see who was going to have the most QB rushing touchdowns on the year. I said Taysom Hill because I was being a smart ass on the podcast, and he ended up with 5 and then got hurt. And then, but you, Addison, you went with Justin Fields, who had 2 rushing touchdowns, didn't have the season you wanted, but you did mention on the show, you even said it, you're like, I didn't want to go with a chalk pick like Jalen Hurts, who actually was the league leader with 10 rushing touchdowns. Even if you include those other guys I took out of the equation, and actually Ryan Tannehill was with 7 touchdowns was second, if I got that right in my notes here. So yeah, little surprises there at the top, but we talked about Hurts. What's your thoughts on Fields? Didn't really get the starts we were hoping to get the number you were looking for, but what's your thoughts on Justin Fields heading into year 2?
No, Matt Nagy is my those are my thoughts. Yeah, I mean, I listened to the show as well and cringing at everything that I said. But I really hope that all of the stuff that I was optimistic for Justin Fields last year carries over to 2022 in a new offense, giving him a fresh start and stuff. And, sometimes you can worry about the coaching personnel or the coaching staff changing, rapidly for rookie quarterbacks, and they have to learn new systems. And that's a lot. Like they tried to learn one thing the previous year, they're learning a whole new thing this new year. Baker Mayfield suffered greatly from that for the first couple of years of his career as well. But I think this is a positive for Justin Fields, obviously, to move away from Matt Nagy. And hopefully now this offense can be more tailored to him, because it did feel like the Bears, even though they went with Justin Fields, it felt like kind of like what you said with the Niners, where it was like it never really seemed like he was their starter. Like it was almost felt like Nagy was waiting for an opportunity to put Dalton back in. So he never really gave the reins to Justin Fields. But we saw those splash plays come through. I mean, he put up a hell of a game against my Steelers over that second half. And I've seen him do some ridiculous throws. He had that one touchdown run where, man, he ran away from 7 defenders, it felt like, in the backfield, and then just eventually dove into the end zone. And holy crap, the athleticism and the splash plays that we saw from him, I hope really translate. And maybe the rushing touchdowns don't come there. But I think that mobility that is there kind of helps propel him to being a good quarterback in the NFL, and then be good for fantasy.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. Him being on the Bears is tough because the organization's been a joke, honestly, at the punchline for a lot of people. But like you said, no Nagy there. Hopefully they can bring somebody in, get this kid the offense that he needs in order to be productive for them, but also for fantasy. Because I do think at this point, I'm testing the waters on him right now. If he's not on my team, just trying to see, if I can withstand a 2022 season where I'm not having to count on him, but I can acquire him for a little bit cheaper. His price tag's obviously dropped since last season, because if we don't see that instant return, we're just trying to cash out. Sure. So I'm trying to see if that owner's getting a little bit worried, but I'm holding out hope. I'm with you. Couple more quarterback ones here. Most interceptions. The league leader with 17, it was actually a tie, was Matthew Stafford and Trevor Lawrence with 17. And I predicted Trevor Lawrence to have the most INTs. Imagine that, rookie QB that just going to have to chuck it. So I got one, feeling good about that. But I liked yours too. You picked Sam Darnold. You trashed him. You told everyone he was going to suck, and he did. I had him in some super flex leagues. I counted on him. That was a disgrace. But Sam Darnold had 13 picks. But I even did the math for you on interceptions per game because he was injured. He was second. He had more than one interception per game. So I'm still gonna give you some props there on trying to divert everyone from Sam Darnold. If that's all right with you.
Yeah, no, that'd be fantastic. I think any advice that is along the lines of don't have Sam Darnold on fantasy is pretty sound advice.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we kind of read a few QB situations. Carolina's another one. Like, you have the DJ Moore jersey behind you. I have a lot of DJ Moore shares. If that dude could ever score more than 4 touchdowns, that would be freaking awesome.
Right.
I couldn't believe the target numbers he had. Like, when I look back at his stats at the end of this, I was like, holy crap! Like, this dude, like why isn't this following? Why isn't the production following the opportunity, the talent that we know? But the quarterback situation is just it's been rough, and they fired their OC before the season even ended. So it's going to be a new kind of regime on that offensive side of the ball, I guess. But
they got Ben McAdoo.
Yes, yeah. Which I was like, all right, well, that wasn't what I necessarily was looking for, but
I don't think it's that bad. I made a YouTube short saying that it's not as bad as what people think it is. So
there you go. See, you're some content man right here, throwing it back out there. We'll keep this moving. QB spikes. This one was a hotly debated category. You went with Justin Herbert, who had a grand total of 1 spike. I went with old Dan Jones, who also had 1 spike on the season. I even tried to see if I combined Mike Glennon spikes in there. If that helped, that didn't matter. So we're sitting there with 1. But the league leaders, in case anybody wants to know, it was a tie between Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff with 5 spikes. So yeah, in case you're in a points per spike league next year, make sure you get those guys.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know what else can be deemed from that, but Pro Football Reference, if anybody wants to find the spike stats, that's where I found it. All right, maybe a little bit of a better conversation here. Running back time, total touchdown leaders on the season. The winner here, the result, Jonathan Taylor, no surprise, and Austin Eckler, 20 touchdowns. They tied for total touchdowns. Addison, you went with CMC, which I thought was an excellent prediction at the time. And I went with Aaron Jones. I thought was maybe a sneaky one. Jones ended up with 10 touchdowns. CMC obviously just played, less than half the year and had 2 total touchdowns. So any thoughts on either Jones or CMC there as far as those being our predictions, but just came up short?
Dude, if we ever get a full 15 games of CMC ever again, it would just be so amazing.
Yeah.
Fantasy football is so much better when Christian McCaffrey's putting up 30 points a game. Yeah, that sucks. Aaron Jones, I kind of said that in the Zeke thing, just he's been a sell for me in Dynasty for a few months now just because of the usage. His contract is not good either. It's very team friendly. They can cut him after this year. AJ Dillon just takes over more and more rushing work. Jones is still the guy when they get down into the red zone, and he's still the pass catcher. And still athletically and visually still looks very good. It's just really weird usage for him that we don't necessarily love for fantasy. But he had 10 touchdowns, which is fantastic. So obviously he was doing something right, and was still good for fantasy this year. I'm worried about the longevity.
Yeah, I had Aaron and Jones. This was a guy that changed pretty quick for me as far as the thoughts on him. At the end of the year, he was a guy we did a award show, and he was kind of a guy that I had kind of dog-eared as I think this is my final ride with Aaron Jones. It is in 2021. I did not like how the split was at the end of the year. I think him being involved in the passing game should help him be fantasy relevant in 2022, but I just think his days as a top 12 potential guy, even if Rodgers comes back, is just off the table. 10 of those touchdowns, 6 were receiving. So I still think he can be startable for sure. But I just think, I had him more as hey, this guy's he's as much of a bell cow as you're going to get these days. Him involved in the passing game is great. He has that skill. But if AJ Dillon's taking the goal line looks a little bit more like we saw in that second half, and seeing, even split on or close to it on the ground, then that scares me a bit. So
Sure.
we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong. I like Aaron Jones a lot, and this is coming from the Jamal Williams guy when these guys were drafted. So that was stupid. That's worse than taking AJ Green over Amari Cooper. So at least you aren't known for that. But
it's all right. You could have been on the Trey Sermon over Elijah Mitchell train, like 95% of those people out there.
Dude, I this is how fun Dynasty will kick you right in the balls plenty of times, because I had Trey Sermon like 2 leagues. I got him like right with the draft, like he was getting hyped, but he wasn't like the peak of his hype yet, right? So I got him for like a late first or an early second, even in some 1 QB leagues, whatever. And I was getting peppered with offers, and I'm like, no, man, I'm not cashing out just yet. I'm gonna see how this. I'm gonna get him, at the peak, and then I'm gonna cash out. Little did I know that was the peak. That was it. Like I tried, and the one team I had him on, especially, I was trying. I thought I was a contender enough, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go for it. I tried seeing if I could move Sermon for anything. Like I was literally looking for like just an injury replacement fill-in for a flex, and no one wanted him. Like no one even wanted to dabble in that junk. I was like, yeah, I regret that. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, that was rough. Luckily, I didn't have too many redraft shares, but those dynasty ones, it got me. That rookie hype, it got me for sure. All right, next one here. CMC. This one was, I think the next 2 here are kind of quirky.
CMC, man.
CMC receptions or Derrick Henry receptions times 4. So Derrick Henry had 18 receptions, which he was on pace. I think his career has 19. And he had 18 receptions in just the 8 games or whatever he played. Yeah. So he was seeing a little bit of work there.
It was fantastic. Yeah. I loved it as a Derrick Henry fantasy guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Yeah, it was definitely just. I think JT's year was awesome, but like I think it overshadowed just how damn good Derrick Henry's year was until that injury, and it just that obviously just crushed fantasy teams. But as far as this category goes, Derrick Henry 18 receptions times 4 is 72. And CMC only had 37 receptions in his 7-ish games there. So you and I both predicted CMC.
What? 37?
He had 37 catches. Yeah.
Oh my god!
I know, dude.
He was McCaffrey's so good.
He was on pace for 89 catches, which is actually down for him.
Yeah. What the heck, man?
I know, and I don't know how many games he completed. Like I think when I was looking, I think he played 7 games. He was probably injured in like half of them. Yeah. So, CM, I mean, for me, the takeaway is like CMC is a freaking beast. And like you said, if we just get I'd take 13 games from him, and I feel like as long as those games include 3 games at the end of the year, I'm probably looking pretty damn good. But I don't know, man. I mean, are you trying to, like, are you going to do this one more year with him?
Mm-hmm. Or totally. Yeah. In Dynasty, I'm a little scared. Sure. Just because if it happens again, where like people would start saying the word like Todd Gurley if it happens again, and I'm just that when that happens, the community is really gonna kill him. But in redraft, I am so in on it again. Like I'm gonna be out of here picking him top 5. Dude, like when he plays a whole game. I remember the first game he came back, he was the RB1 on the week, and he didn't score a touchdown. He scored like 27 fantasy points. I'm like, what are you like? He's like 10 for 100 and receiving, which is like 20 fantasy points there. And he's got like 13 for 70 rushing yards. You're like, what are you even doing?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm totally going to be in on him as another top 5 option again next year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you have to go for it, because especially in redraft, like if you have to take the shot, and if you fail, it is what it is. But like there's no reason to like half commit, So for me, I'm going to be back on CMC again. If there's enough angry Mog people out there that push him into end of round 1, are you kidding me?
If he's a back end first rounder, or even a second rounder, holy crap, dude.
Yeah. So I'm going to give him another pass, at least for redraft. Dynasty, I don't think his value's fallen enough where I'm going to be like buying him, because it is risky. But like the problem is, I don't feel there's a lot of good young running backs, but I don't feel like there's been that huge wave of that I would have like hoped, I guess. Like I think it's still kind of debatable, like kind of that old guard a little bit with like kind of Cook, Kamara's getting up there a little bit. CMC is obviously a little bit older. Derrick Henry. And like then you have like maybe the Akers or Dobbins. CEH hasn't really done it.
Gibson.
Like that. You kind of still have, JT's up there, Najee, Swift for me. Like those guys have kind of leapfrogged and they're up there in their own kind of little world. But like I wish there was like 3 or 4 more names that could kind of scoot in there, like that haven't yet. So like CMC's kind of riding in that front of that tier of old and younger guys that haven't emerged. So I'm trying to, I don't know. We'll see. I haven't owned enough CMC in fantasy before. So like I want to have him on my team a couple more times and hope it hits,
Oh yeah. Oh, it's great.
So 2 more. Well, we got a few more running back ones here. We'll go through these next 2 pretty quick, just because we did them. The next one was a crazy ass math equation that I came up with. It really wasn't that crazy, but it was stupid. I don't know how this is fantasy relevant, but it was Derrick Henry's rushing attempts plus his receiving yards as one, or the rushing yards for the leader on the Houston Texans at running back. So this one probably would have been a landslide for Derrick Henry, because in half the season he had 219 attempts, which is just freaking unbelievable. He had 154 receiving yards, so that totaled 373. The corpse of Rex Burkhead came on in the second half and rushed for 427 yards. So technically, Addison, you were correct. The Houston Texans running back was the correct answer here. And unfortunately for the 2 of us, it was not named Philip Lindsay, because we talked about that on the preseason show.
Freaking Rex Burkhead.
Yeah, but so that one is what it is. Take what you need there. And then running back for the longest rush, our predictions here, I had Myles Gaskin for whatever reason. His longest rush was 30 yards. Your prediction was Raheem Mostert, which was very sound. The dude's got some wheels. He had 20 total yards on the year with his 2 rushing attempts. So,
dude, he's probably the leader in yards per carry, huh?
I would think so. His longest rush was 11, so averaged 10 yards a carry. The answer there was Jonathan Taylor, that 83-yard rush this season. So there you go.
Which I don't even think was a touchdown. Was that even a touchdown?
I don't remember.
Actually,
now that you mention it,
a reception.
He had that long touchdown run to close out that primetime game.
That was only,
but that wasn't
83
yards.
That was in the 60s.
I think you may be right. I think I'm gonna go back and figure it out after the show, because I think you might be right. It might not even been a touchdown, which is kind of hilarious. But
I heard some crazy stat from the fantasy footballers that Jonathan Taylor was tackled inside the 5 like 17 or 18 times on a drive that didn't end in Jonathan Taylor scoring a touchdown.
Oh, really? Holy crap. That would, I mean, even if it's half of that, I mean, are you kidding me? Like the dude, we said it, he led the running back. He was tied with Eckler with 20 total touchdouns. That's unreal.
Like he could have had the opportunity to be like double that based on how many times he was tackled inside the 5.
That's great. That's crazy. And it's not like one of those Melvin Gordon ones where, like, back when he was on the Chargers, that dude, they'd give him 4 attempts. Like once they got within like the 3, like first down, like handoff, he just stuff. And on 4th down, like, okay, Melvin, one more time, and he'd get in. And that's how he ended up with double-digit touchdowns every year, because they literally didn't care. They just like, here you go. But apparently JT, I mean, who knew that there was more touchdown upside there after 20 TDs? This one's a little bit more fantasy relevant, so we'll dive into this one, the running back spot. The top 3 running backs in rushing first downs. So any opportunity I can say, if you can add rushing first down, like first down, points per first down to your league, do it. I freaking love it. It just makes the game more fun too. It gives more value to those rushes or catches, whatever, that actually produce first downs. There's my commercial. But the top 3 running backs in first downs, the finishers were Jonathan Taylor by a ton, had 107 rushing first downs. Janelle Gibson had 65. Najee Harris had 62. You and I both said the obvious picks, or pick of Derrick Henry, which would have been on here if he didn't get hurt. We both said Zeke, and then you had Dalvin Cook, and I did throw Jonathan Taylor out there. I got lucky, at least hitting on one of those. Yeah. And any takeaways there, or just, anything you want to gush about it with points for first down? Either way is fine.
Points for first down is fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to play, and I love. I was introduced to that in Scott Fishbowl, and I've loved it ever since. So
Oh yeah.
definitely consider adding that. Antonio Gibson was second.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised by that. I did double check it, so hopefully I'm not wrong. Hopefully I didn't need to triple check it.
I
But
wonder if that's just based on health, because a lot of running backs missed a decent amount of time.
yeah, I was surprised that he was that far up there. Like Najee didn't surprise me just based off of like his volume that he had over the
Mhm.
course of the year. But yeah, Gibson being number 2 definitely surprised me for rushing first downs. I mean, there's a over 40 first down gap between first and second on
Right.
here. So it's definitely it's definitely pretty wide between 1 and 2, but that was the one that jumped out to me. I was like, oh, I wouldn't have expected that. He's not a guy
Mhm.
that I would have predicted. I think our thought process on Henry, Zeke, Taylor, Cook, like those kind of automatic. But I think it
Right.
may come down just to other running back health. I guess I didn't do it on a point per game.
Right.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I think, just as far as the running backs go, Jonathan Taylor obviously took home a lot of crowns here. I think he's going to be the consensus 101 next season. There's a lot of guys I like though. As far as redraft goes, I guess, for Dynasty, I wouldn't take him as the 101, but that's just me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely good to see him break out in year 2 here. And he's definitely changed the script on him real quick after just a few months. So,
Yeah.
wide receivers. This one is my favorite category. This is wide receiver duo with the most fantasy points. The results. The winner was actually the Rams because Cooper Kupp is so freaking insane. He carried Van Jefferson's ass to the number 1 spot with 607 fantasy points total. So the top 5 behind the Rams at number 1 was the Vikings, Bengals, 49ers, Debo, and then Tampa Bay, which I thought they would have ended a little bit higher if Godwin wouldn't have got hurt on there. But Rams, Vikings, Bengals, 49ers, and Bucks. You and I picked the top 2. You had Minnesota. I picked the Rams. I picked it because I thought it would be Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
But we did that one some justice there. So any takeaways on those duos? Any surprises either in or out of that top 5?
I was trying to see where Cooper Kupp would have been just by himself.
I have the number. Where did he go?
He's probably like
439 on his own. That would have been he would have been 10th by himself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he had more points than points than a duo. So this is just the top 2 on the team. And so Kansas City, Dallas, the Panthers, Raiders, he was above those guys. Those guys were 10th through 13th or so. So by himself, he was 10th.
So he was above the. Imagine at the beginning of the year just telling somebody that Cooper Kupp is going to outscore both Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb by himself.
No
Imagine
chance.
saying that.
Yeah,
That is
I
wild,
was
dude.
blown away by that. I like when I saw my prediction was the Rams, I was like, dang, I felt like that was good, but when I like totaled it up, like, oh, I actually got this, which was just crazy. Actually, did I sell the number here? Because of Cup, Minnesota being second, they
How far
were as a
behind?
duo, they were 77 points behind the Rams. Like,
Oh my gosh.
just crazy. Absolutely nuts. I mean, part of that too, I think, is like Dillon, missing some time,
Sure.
on that, but like absolutely insane how good Cooper Kupp was this year. I mean, I don't know what else to really say about that man at this point. It's every single week. It's just nuts.
Man, I wonder like if you that probably looks even worse too. Like if you say like Robert Woods' points and then OBJ's points like after he joined the Rams, because they were
Yeah.
basically kind of like the same player.
Yeah.
That would probably look even way worse. They'd
Yeah.
probably be over 700.
Yeah. Because Woods was at 15 points per game in his. So if we'll just do I got my Excel here. So we'll do Woods versus Cup. If we just added Woods points per game, let's just use that. That would have been
Yeah, like it has to be extra, at least 100 or so.
Oh yeah, it's an almost another 90 points on top of that if Woods would have stayed on his points per game pace, which is just freaking nuts. Um,
Oh
that's
man.
insanity. Almost 700 points if it would have been Roberts Woods pace plus Cooper Cup. I mean, ridiculous. So, but I think I mean, some of the things weren't too surprising. I mean, Minnesota, the duo there, obviously led by Jefferson, but Cincinnati, I think that's the one where I'm like, if I had to put an early bet for next year, like I'm going to bet on the Bengals because I love T. Higgins, you know, and it's already easy to love Jamar Chase. So that's where I would lean. But I thought we did pretty good there. I'll give us that one.
1 and 2. I mean, we did pretty well.
Not too bad. Rookie wide receivers. So we went with the most fantasy points rookie wide receiver. Neither of us went the chalk pick that probably was, I guess. I don't know. Hopefully when we're getting wrapped up in the Jamar Chase can't see footballs because he was the leader. He was the number 5 wide receiver in all of fantasy, number 1 rookie wide receiver with 304 points. Our guesses, I guess Jalen Waddle, who had 245 points, was wide receiver 13. You cheated
number 2, right?
And said he was number 2 among the rookies.
Yeah.
You cheated and said Kyle Pitts, who had 176. You cheated the wrong way.
When it bombs that hard, did I really cheat?
So, but still solid fantasy production all the way around. Pitts had 1 touchdown. I mean, that's not going to happen again. So, just any thoughts on those young guys? Like we kind of hyped. We were hyping Elijah Moore on that show too. His points per game was really solid. So it's good. I think again, just it was good to see those rookies all come out and have some really good performances. But you were a big Kyle Pitts fan. So are you what's your thoughts after his rookie season here? After impressive stats, just the fantasy numbers weren't necessarily there because of the touchdowns.
Yeah, it was entirely the touchdowns, which I'm hoping. I mean, I would bet that he has more than 1 next year. I remember the first.
I think that's solid.
That's probably a good bet. I remember watching a few of those games at the beginning of the year, and Matt Ryan would just target him 2 or 3 times every game, and it would just sail over his head, or he would be running a crossing route through the end zone, and it would just be just ahead of him to where he had to make some crazy catch to get it. And he wasn't able to bring it in and stuff. And yeah, man, it's those touchdowns. I mean, if you give him, 4 more touchdowns, he's over 200 points. And that's still only 5, which I think is still pretty low for him. I was thinking he'd be up more in the closer to double digits, if not 8, something like that. Just because of how huge he is, how athletic he is, how many targets he was going to get, which he ended up getting. And I'm still on the Kyle Pitts train. His dynasty value obviously hasn't dropped at all because it's Kyle Pitts. Yeah. But I'm hoping that the redraft value will drop, and I'd be in on that again. I mean, obviously, looking back on it, every Kyle Pitts league that I took him in, I passed on Mark Andrews for, so that obviously was a horrible decision.
Yeah.
But him versus TJ Hawkinson wasn't really a bad decision. And obviously you could say, well, you should have taken Gronk, you should have taken Dawson Knox or Dalton Schultz or whatever. But if Pitts slides down and he's a borderline tight end 1 or a borderline top 10 tight end in redraft next year, I'll be all in on him again.
Yeah, I think I think if anything, his dynasty value probably shot up, in my opinion, because for me, when I'm looking at you kind of have the older guys, and Andrews, he's a little bit younger than Gronk and Kittle and Waller, right. But for me, Hawkinson not taking that step, I'm like, oh my God, who the hell do we have at this position anymore? You could be, you obviously know, I think what you're getting from those vet guys, but then beyond, you're talking even 2 years. You could be staring down. This position could look really freaking gross. I mean, I know that on the war zone, the guys, I know Memphis, I think he put Gasicki and tight end 6 in his rankings. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. He had some big flashes. He's super talented, but in, there are games in Miami where they were just go sit down, get the hell out of here. What, you just stare, is he even in the game? No, he's on the bench. He plays half the snaps because the dude doesn't block. So I think with Pitts though, man, I was encouraged by what I saw. I will not be helping you get Kyle Pitts outside the top 6 because I have as my tight end 2 for next year in redraft.
Holy
I
crap.
think I'm in. I love the volume. The touchdowns will come. And just some of the things that I saw from from the question marks with Kittle with a quarterback, Mark Andrews, his points per game skyrocketed without Lamar Jackson. What happens when Lamar comes back? Does that balance out somewhere in the middle? And then Waller, a lot of question marks there with the new regime coming in. The 2 touchdowns, was kind of tough. And I like Waller a ton, but I think Pitts' upside is going to be way up there. And I'm getting one of those guys I just mentioned, no matter what. I'm not leaving my draft without a tight end anymore. I'm done with that streaming thing for now until it becomes only Kyle Pitts by himself, like in 3 years, and there's no other tight ends. I don't need just Kyle Pitts, but I'm in on it. So we'll see, man. But year 2, better days ahead for Kyle Pitts. So
I'm here for it. I'm all here for it.
Last 2 more wide receiver ones. These will be quick. League leader in receiving yards. It was obviously Cooper Kupp, who had 1947. He had 331 more receiving yards than second place, which was Jefferson was second.
It was Jefferson? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought
so Kupp, obviously monster. You and I both predicted the same player. It was Calvin Ridley, who hopefully will be back to football next year, because that was disappointing. I love watching that kid play, and it was an injury. It was obviously personal stuff. And the reports are now that he might not be in Atlanta next year. So another name to watch on that front. But yeah, I don't know what it's hard to give advice on Calvin Ridley because it's like, man, it could be, you just don't, you have no idea. It's not like always come back from an injury, right? Like the guy is just trying to take care of himself, which he should. But like now you don't know where he's even going to be next year, which could be good or bad depending on how you feel about that Falcon situation. But yeah, I know I was in a hold pattern on him a lot because what people were offering me for Calvin Ridley was just insulting.
Right.
I was like, forget it. I know, I don't need Robbie Anderson. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and pass on that trade offer. Anyway, I don't know what else needs to be said there, but we got, we'll just move to the next one. Wide receiver with the highest ADOT, that's what I'm all about. Those advanced stats, minimum 25 targets. I think maybe I set the minimum too low. I don't know. Because I literally, when I sorted it by I didn't have to exclude anybody. But the league leader in average depth was Deshaun Jackson was on his 34 targets, was at 19 yards. The top 5, I got this for all of you interested, was Deshaun Jackson at 19, MVS at 17.9, Henry Ruggs at just under 17 on the 36 targets he had, Sutton at 15.5, and then Donovan Peoples-Jones tied with Sutton as well at 15.5. My prediction was Gabe Davis, which I accidentally should have saved Gabe Davis for the category of who's going to score 4 receiving touchdowns in a playoff game, but I screwed that up. But you had Henry Ruggs, so your thought process, I think, on that one was right. But I don't know. Did anything to take away from that, or is this just not helpful from a fantasy perspective?
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the top 5 with 4 of those names being players that you're probably not playing at all in D Jackson, MVS, and obviously Ruggs, but and then Donovan Peoples-Jones. Yeah, that's just the nature of that ADOT stat right there.
Yeah, I definitely think when people throw that out there, it's like it only matters if it's too low.
Right.
That'll carry you a bit. And I think you're going to hear that Jalen Waddle tied to that ADOT stat all off season for whatever reason. I mean, I don't care a whole lot, but either. I've heard people give that as a negative to him, in 1 year. Anyway,
his other 110 receptions isn't a positive, but 6.6 ADOT, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Last 2 were tight end ones here. Total touchdowns for the top 3, which was Kelsey, Kittle, Waller. The total ended up being 18. Travis Kelsey carried 10 of those himself. Kittle and Waller 6 and 2. I would say respectfully, but that really wasn't respectable. Darren Waller, I'm looking at you. I guessed 27, so I was way the hell off. You guessed 23, so you were definitely closer there. But Any takeaways on that top 3 tight ends? Are those still your top 3 for next year, or does Kyle Pitts enter the conversation? Is Mark Andrews now in that tier? What's your thoughts at tight end heading into 2022?
Yeah, Andrews is definitely gonna bump up in there. I
Mhm.
don't know if I bet you I would probably have him ahead of Kittle and Waller.
Mhm.
Because I still believe it. Like, even though his stats got propped up by Huntley, like he
Mhm.
was still doing work with Lamar Jackson,
Oh yeah.
and he has been for sure. He's Lamar's guy.
Mhm.
So I definitely trust him to the point where I've even argued that there's a very strong argument for Mark Andrews to be the dynasty tight end one over Kyle Pitts,
Mhm.
kind of depending on how you play.
Sure.
So yeah, he would definitely. I don't know if I can put Pitts up there, maybe over Waller as well. Man, Waller was just disappointing. That
Yeah.
sucked. I think I said I don't think I was too far off, honestly, because if I remember right, I think I said that I was banking on Kelsey getting to double digits and just hoping that Kittle and Waller kind of got 6 or 7 each.
Yep.
I
And
think
you're
that's
right
where I
there.
was.
Waller the touchdowns just disappeared on
Ah,
top of the injuries. So I feel like
yeah.
that was pretty close.
Yeah. I mean, Hunter Renfro just stealing all these
Yeah.
touchdowns out here,
Duh, Addison. What the hell? What are all those YouTube videos for if you're not predicting, Hunter Renfro fantasy production, in August? I mean, damn it. Yeah, I definitely, I think I still have Kelsey at the top for redraft, but I think
Sure.
that tier now has expanded those couple names with Andrews. I'm putting Pitts in there. And I just like for redraft, I like the upside of Pitts just taking the shot on it with some of the other
Sure.
question marks, but Andrews has definitely jumped into that group. I would love it if TJ Hawkinson took that step as well, but
Me too.
and then it's your cliff diving a bit, depending on what I mean, maybe Goddard now that he's free of Ertz and what we saw there, but it gets a little bit rough. So hopefully we'll see some better touchdown numbers from a few of these guys. But yeah, so good job there. 23 was closest to the pin, and then the last one here was number of receptions for Kyle Pitts, our boy. His total was 68 receptions, nice -1. And we were really close on this number. I guess 67, so I was off by 1, and you predicted 72. So right in that same ballpark.
We were right there.
That was right on it. We just needed a few more touchdowns from the guy.
Yeah, I know. Which those 68 receptions was also disappointing considering the fact that he had 110 targets. That's a 62% completion or catch rate.
Yeah.
Like that.
I thought that when I looked at the number, because I'm always looking at targets, and I just remember him being involved, throughout the year. But when
Right.
I saw that it was only 68, and especially how that kind of stacks up in comparison, it was like, oh, that really wasn't what you would have hoped if someone said, hey, he's getting 100 plus targets, right?
Yeah.
You would hope for a little bit more, but it's just the nature of that beast, I guess, and unfortunately, we'll never know what that offense would have been like in 2021 if Calvin Ridley was still there, because I mean, man, they don't have anyone else there. And Russell Gage is great and everything, but like I don't think he's not helping Kyle Pitts a whole lot, as far as if you got that solidified number 1 on the outside with Ridley. But anyway,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
good job there, man. Overall, this is tough. Again, I highly recommend everybody listening to this. Do this yourself. Play along with us next year. When we do this, hopefully I'll have you back, Addison, because this is at least 2 years running now.
I think so.
That we've done this. So it's been a ton of fun. But yeah, overall, man, good job. Appreciate you jumping on here, having some fun, going down memory lane as far as 2021 goes, as we're approaching the Super Bowl here, and then shifting into high gear into 2022 already. But before we sign off, one more time, where can people just find your content and everything, so make sure that we're keeping up with you?
Yeah, Amaze Hayes _ on Twitter, and then the DLF YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you are not, because we're dropping. It's Dynasty, so I know this can be structured and tailored to a little bit of redraft people. But if you're interested and are playing in Dynasty, I would highly recommend checking out the channel, just because of all the content that we're dropping, not only from me, but from a lot of other fantastic people over on the DLF team and stuff. So we got content dropping Monday through Friday, and now Monday through Saturday with Cal's new show, which is super informative. And again, Matt Wallman will be on. That drops on Saturday, so you can check that one out. And he's going to have amazing guests as well, moving out through the rest of the off season. So DLF YouTube channel.
All right. And I will speak for the Warzone Network here that we would obviously endorse Addison. We know he's a good guy. So definitely check out their content. There's nothing wrong with subscribing to multiple channels here because we know you guys already subscribed to the Warzone channel. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on, Addison. You guys listening, gonna continue here on the Warzone Network, continue to drop content throughout the week leading up to the Super Bowl. On the Smackdown next week, we're gonna have a little bit of fun with a lot of the network guys jumping on here. Names still all TBD, but we're gonna have at least 2-3 guys on here with me, just hanging out, chatting a little bit before Super Bowl Sunday. So looking forward to that. But until then, be sure you're following Addison on Twitter at @AmazeHaze_. You can follow me on Twitter at KyleMonth8, and I will check you guys out next week. See you then.